my phone on silent. Hello, I believe we're live. Welcome to the Business of Property Facebook country. We have Darren Younger from Bricklit and on the Business of Property with us. This is really exciting stuff. Give me a moment. I'm going to have a look at as technology goes so that I can see all the fantastic comments that are coming through. And please, anyone that's watching, feel free to put this on a watch party so you can share far and wide. Darren is here today, who is the CEO of Bricklit, which is a brand new game-changing fragmented property ownership platform. So if you haven't heard of Bricklit, you're hearing it for the first time today, which is really, really cool. Darren is no stranger to the technology and startup space, I believe. How many startups have you been involved in, Darren?
About 4 or 5 now.
Oh, just a casual 4 or 5, just like as many children as you have. And that's fantastic. So you're, I'd like to talk to you a bit about obviously the background of Bricklit, your background, and how the whole Bricklit idea came about. And I'm sure we have lots of different comments from our community here. We've got a community of very active investors and property developers. So to have something like this where they're like, what do you mean we can own, pieces of property brick by brick? What does that mean? And what does that mean as well to possibly property development? So what I'll do is I will read through any sort of comments that we have along the way. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions there, but to start off with, I guess tell us a little bit about your sort of background and how Bricklit came about.
Yeah, sure. I guess to start with, just give a little bit of background. So yeah, I mean, I've been involved with technology for quite a number of years, and just recently we're working with a number of people, talking to people in the office, and about how hard it is to get into the property market with the prices up. It's getting really, really hard for people to market, and started to see different platforms enter the market around ways to invest indirectly into property through funds and through unit trusts and things, and thought, well, maybe there's a way that we can actually invest. Can we cut up properties into smaller pieces to enable investment property that's actually on title? And so started to explore that, and everyone that I sort of spoke to loved the idea. And so what came out of that was just kind of exploring it. Spoke to a number of the land titles officers and a number of legal people and property developers, and to understand the whole ecosystem, how the whole thing worked, and started to come up with a way that we could actually turn a property cut it into smaller pieces to be able to sell it off. So we call this property fragmentation. So we turn it in, we're cutting it up into fragments. The opportunity started to get a little bit more interesting, and the more traction we got, more people were getting very interested in it. And so then we took it a bit more serious and got it to a point where we came up with the structure that enables that to work. And to give a really simple example, if you take an investment property, let's say take an apartment as a simple concept. Say there's an apartment that's worth $500,000. So instead of selling it for $500,000 on the market as a full apartment, what we can do is we can fragmentize it. So we can chuck it into 20 fragments, which we call bricklets. And those fragments are $25,000 each. So for a $25,000 piece, you own that piece of the apartment. You also get the rental, so the net rent every month. And you also receive anything, not only do you own the property, but you also have got no hassle, because with Bricklit, you're also a passive investor. So one of the other big challenges that we wanted to solve was being a landlord can be, a bit of a hassle. So can we solve that as well? So So what we do with that is we bring in an asset manager who manages the property on the behalf of the Bricklet holders. So the Bricklet holders, but the two main benefits as a landlord or as a Bricklet holder, let's call it, is that one, you don't have any drama around having to make decisions, or you're not going to have, the property manager call you and say, we've got this problem, do we need to send a tradesman to fix it or anything like that? It's all managed by the asset manager. The other thing that's really exciting about it being a passive investment is that there's also no need to put money back into the platform. So we're as a standard landlord, one of the biggest concerns is, do I have to continually put money in to cover the costs and kind of cash flows in, cash flows out. So with Bricklet, it's managed very differently. In fact, to the point where the asset manager manages that cash flow. And so any expenses that need to come out, they come out during the month, and then they're reimbursed at the end of the month with the rent, so that the Bricklet holders never have to actually put more money in. So once you own it, you're just getting the net rent every month as well. So it's becoming, it's really exciting. We launched the platform in December. We've had over $8 million worth of Bricklets sold, over 250 Bricklets, which has been very exciting. Very exciting journey so far, and a lot of people are getting behind it.
That's fantastic. So how long was it in the making?
It was about 18 months before that. So we started off with a few different ideas, spoke to a number of organisations. We spoke to the South Australian government, was very helpful. I think they had a lot of interest because the Torrens title, which is what it's built on, was invented in South Australia many years ago. And this is seen as the next evolution of that. And so they were very excited to help us in the early days. And we launched the first pilot with them back in October last year, which was great.
Excellent. So you've got a few big backers in as part of the business as well, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, we've been very fortunate to have Mirvac and Stockland, both investors in the platform, and both looking forward to putting some properties on the platform at some point soon. So we're really excited to have those guys as backers, and I mean, they see it as a new channel to market. I mean, if you think about being a developer, the only option is that you can sell full price properties. So to have the opportunity to sell those properties in smaller pieces to a different market adds a lot of value.
One of the big draw cards of this, and what really attracted me to what you're doing, is I'm in the property development space, and we're funding things, and one of the things that that I've noticed for a while is that the normal, when I say normal, the everyday mum and dad retail investor doesn't really have a lot of scope to invest in a huge portfolio. And if they do that, they're tied up, they have to have a minimum of 150,000. And most investors have one or two properties, and then they find that they're really stuck. This seems to be able to allow you to, if you had 100 grand, well, you could potentially have a wide portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the two main things that Bricklet helps people with is, one is that diversification. So, which is being very well received in the self-managed super fund world. So in SMSFs, so that problem is actually solved quite well, because a lot of people want to invest with property with their SMSF, and with 100 grand or 200 grand, you can't buy much direct property. So with Bricklet, you could have a portfolio of property right across Australia with 100 or 200 grand, and still have that direct property portfolio. So it is very valuable for that kind of market as well. The other, I guess, really exciting piece is, we'll be announcing very soon that we're working with a number of finance companies around financing Bricklets. So what that means is, once we can start to leverage Bricklets, someone who's saved $5,000 or $10,000 will be able to buy a $50,000 Bricklet. And so it means, it's no different to the principles of saving up 100, 200 grand and buying a property, but it's on a much smaller scale, and it allows people to move much faster.
Yeah, so they can leverage like they would a normal investment property.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Okay. Okay, so are you finding the markets that are really drawn to it? Are they your you mentioned the self-managed super, but I'm assuming also we've got a whole lot of millennials who have been told that they can't afford property.
Yeah.
I saw a Monopoly game that absolutely said that as well. Let's face it, you can't afford to buy a house anyhow,
Yeah.
and that's a little bit grim. But will this allow them? Is this something that then allows them and opens up that market to say, hey, you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it allows the millennials, anybody that's trying to get into the property market with a small amount of money will be able to enter the property market. And what's really interesting is that we're seeing more and more trends like rent vesting, which means, I'm going to rent the place that I live in and I'm going to invest I still want an investment property, but it's not going to be the home that I live in. So we're seeing more and more trends like that Bricklet helps enable. So those millennials that have got 10 20 grand saved up can buy into the property market, and by using that leverage can start to really grow a portfolio very quickly.
Yeah, okay. So I know there are lots of questions here in terms of so there's one go into this as, is it a tenants in common type scenario?
Yeah, so basically how it works is that all the Bricklet owners are listed on title that uses tenants in common.
Mm.
So if you think about the platform being a very sophisticated way to manage the names or the entities that are on title under that tenants in common model.
Okay, all right. And so what I'm trying to get my head around is, well, how do you get so many, and what's the maximum number of bricklets that you can have, or bricklet holders?
Technically, there's no limit. So it's more about how to make it efficient enough to make it commercially possible. So
Okay.
if you think about if you had 20 people or 30 people that wanted to buy a property in the traditional method, each of them paying their own conveyancer and doing everything that needed to be done in a manual process would be very expensive. So, or the automation of the platform and the integrations into platforms such as PEXA for the integration into doing the land title transfers and things like that enables the platform to exist.
Okay. So for people, I mean, what sort of properties are on the platform now that allow themselves to the bricklet ownership?
Yeah, so at the moment we've got the first properties are in at the moment the ones that are left are in Sydney, and they are completed properties. We've just completed a development project as well,
Okay.
the funding for that, which is really interesting. And so for the developer world, I think I'll save that one more for our part 2
Yeah,
conversation.
that's right. Yeah.
We can go into depth about how we actually how developers are starting to leverage the Bricklet platform to do the full end-to-end development. And it starts to really open up the opportunities, because it means that there's no more finance required for the developers, which is really exciting. But again, we can go into more detail on the next one for that. The properties that are on there at the moment are completed properties, and they are anywhere between kind of 3 to 4% yield, Sydney based. There'll be some more Melbourne based ones listed later this week, should be by the end of the week. And then there's also there's a big backlog of Queensland properties that'll be coming on very, very soon as well.
Okay. And are these mainly sort of off the plan purchases, or different stages of?
Different stages, but all these, I mean, mainly the property is at a completed state. We did the first full development project just to see what the appetite was like, and we sold that one out within 6 weeks. So it was very, very
Yeah,
good.
right. Okay. Yeah, and so that's the question there around, how quickly are these subscribed, like, fully subscribed?
Yeah,
And
it's very interesting. Like there's different there are different types of properties. So I think there's 2 properties on there at the moment that are also NDIS properties. So which changes the yield, and obviously those that are in the property world would understand kind of what that means. And so we're looking at all different types of property as well around how we can try and bring quality product that is good yield or good capital growth, or gives that really good return over a development cycle as well.
Okay. So say for our community, obviously we've got a whole lot of developers and they've got product, right? We're not talking about the funding the project, we're talking about
Yep.
the end product here. So what's the best way for them to be able to utilize? So do they sell it to Bricklit, or how does that sort of mechanics work? So they've got, let's say, 10 townhouses.
Yeah, good question. So how the platform works from a developer's point of view that has completed stock is, so they would we would go through a compliance process around understanding a little bit about the background of the developer, make sure that the quality control boxes are all ticked. Then after that, basically how it works is that there's a listing agreement and it goes on the platform for a period of time. So for each property, it will go on for a period of time and there's a countdown. We work out how many bricklets that that is, probably the most successful for each property, and then we'll list it for that period of time. So it's almost like an option over the property. So
Okay.
if we get to the end of the period and it hasn't sold in full, then it goes back. It's almost like an auction, being passed in at auction kind of thing.
Okay. Okay. So what's sort of the general period that you have it?
Usually it's, we're looking for somewhere between 30 and 60 days usually.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And so what's been the average sort of subscription? Is that the
It's
word to
been
use?
kind of around 30 to 40 days.
Okay. All right. So we've got quite a few investors already waiting on the platform for product.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Which is fantastic because obviously to have $8 million worth of bricklets sold in such a short time,
Yeah.
that's pretty phenomenal. And I guess that's the question that so for a developer then the benefit there, explain there for say for our development community, what would be the benefit to have them, what do they sell? I know I asked this before, but do they then list it on Bricklit? Is that the right
Yeah.
term to say?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So we use a term, we say it's like an initial bricklet offering. So
Okay.
we call that like an IBO because it's very similar in process to what an IPO is in for the stock exchange. So basically how it works is that you've got a period of time that you've got X number of bricklets that need to be sold. And then when they're all sold, then we transact that and then it actually goes live on the platform itself.
Okay. So, alrighty. I think that means, and have you found with developers who have quite a few in a development, like I said, 10 or maybe
Yep.
20,
Yep.
is there ever sort of an issue around that, or do you sort of manage that in stages to say, no, we probably don't want 10 on the platform at once? Let's.
Yeah, there's a management process around, I guess, supply and demand. So we want to make sure that, if we don't want to put hundreds of properties on, of one development, if we want to make sure that we're selling them out. So, we'll definitely stage them. And, if we put 2 on and they sell within 2 days, we're happy to put more and more on very quickly. So it all comes down to how well they sell. And we've got some really good product coming up. So, happy to look at, we're always, trying to source good quality product to put on the platform.
Okay, so great. So developer comes in, or whoever it is that has some sort of product, says, hey, Darren, I'd like to be able to list it on your platform. Is it almost like, I was going to say not realestate.com, but is it almost another sales listing platform to a certain degree?
You could think of it like a sales listing platform, but it's done a little bit differently, obviously. So we're not just selling the property, but we're selling it in, with bricklets. So we're going to cut it up into pieces and then sell the pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm getting a clearer idea. I'm going to have a look at some questions.
Okay.
Brian says, biggest issue, and I'm sure this comes up quite often, is the secondary market. If you need to sell, can you at reasonable price reflective of net asset backing in short period sell the Bricklet? So talk to us about that secondary market, what's happening at the moment.
Yeah, so the liquidity piece, how we solve that is we allow people to, every year, the properties will get valued with an independent valuation. So we know what the price is for that 12-month period. The two options for a Bricklet holder is to, one, sell it on the market, sell it at a market price, and people, can buy it at that price. The other option is if they need an immediate sale, we also have underwriting funds that are there to pick up stock that needs to be sold straight away at a 15% discount. So at any point, the liquidity
right.
is
Okay.
there. If you're happy to take a discount, you can get out straight away.
Okay. So I hope that sort of, so there is, like I said, we've got a solution there.
Correct.
All right. So let's talk about, I asked you before around the ownership and the structure as well. Let's step back a bit. So I've been exposed to a lot of similar sort of platforms where it's mainly a unit trust, and you can buy very small, units or large units. Talk to us about that difference there.
Yeah, so the main difference, I guess, between any of the other similar style platforms or fractionalization platforms is that they run it as a unit trust. So just means it's indirect. So it means that you own units in a unit trust. You don't actually own your property. So with Bricklit, we went to a lot of effort to make sure that anybody that owns a Bricklit is actually on land title. So it might not sound like it's a significant difference, but it does make a lot of difference to people that want to own property, and has a lot of different advantages as well. One of the things that obviously that people realize straight away about that is that each time that you buy a Bricklit, you also do need to pay your prorated stamp duty and any of the fees that are associated. So it has a bit of a negative on that sense, but at the same time, you're getting the pure property.
Okay, so you've got and the legals in terms of conveyancing. How does that get managed?
Yeah, so all the conveyancing is managed with the platform. So we have a national e-conveyancer on the back end, which we're automating more and more. So we leverage a platform called Title Exchange, which is it's an e-conveyancing kind of platform, and we want to. The ultimate goal is to get it to a point where we can transact and have it settled, within hours, if not days, which has never been seen before. So, that'll take a bit of time and a bit of effort, but we're working in conjunction with that entity to make that possible.
So, can you give me an example? If we've got a 25,000, and is that sort of the smallest quantum of investment?
Yeah, 25,000. Maybe go down as low as 20,000, but the reason for the price point is mainly around the stamp duty. So with the prorated stamp duty, when you start to go much lower than that, the percentage of the fees starts to increase. So if you went down to say $10,000 or $5,000 worth of property, the amount that you pay in all the fees, the percentage, even though the dollar amount comes down, the percentage starts to go up, so it doesn't make it as efficient. And also we've done at the very beginning of the project, we spent a lot of time doing a lot of research with the market. We also did that with Mirvac and Stockland as well. We did a lot of work with, trying to understand, what the market is looking for, what makes sense. And that price point as a minimum was valuable because it's property, and property is valuable. So having a really small piece, and someone described it to me one day about, it's like having gold. If I had a gold bullion, then it feels valuable. But if I give you a tiny little speck of gold, even though it's worth the same per ounce, it kind of doesn't feel as valuable.
Yeah. No, and we're particularly, Australia, as you know, we're quite property obsessed, and we like the idea of that ownership as well, and to have that sense of I've got a part of something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is and something, I guess, solid. Yeah. So, who else? Globally, is anything else like there that's operating now?
No, not that we've seen. So we haven't seen anything that is. There's examples of what's called tokenization, which is very different. Which is using a blockchain protocol to create digital assets that represent real estate. So there's kind of, I guess they can do it. That's a different way of trying to do it. But I haven't seen one that actually has the name replicated onto land title.
Yeah, but it seems to a certain extent like like simple. I know it's simple. I know
Yeah.
obviously the technology doesn't, but you know, everyone's come up with this like I said, the crypto, I'm not techie in a way, but
Yeah.
using blockchain and all that fragment, whatever, you know, and but people understand this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the simplest way to understand it is that it is a piece of property that you're buying, and that's what that's really what we would try to solve. And so by putting that structure around it is effectively what we've created, so that you can own a piece of the property, still have your name on title, but be able to trade it in a way or purchase it in a way that has never been done before, to make it really simple and easy.
Yeah, okay. I mean, to me, it sort of makes sense. I mean, I've got young children, and if I want to be able to save some money for them and put them into property now, where
Yeah.
it's still affordable to a certain extent, like I can do so. But I'm sure what are sort of the, you know, like I said, the naysayers, what are they sort of saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that definitely divides people. It's something that is, people just, when they talk about it, it's like typical change. The easiest way to understand it is I use the example of Uber.
Mm,
With Uber, if I ask people, have you caught an Uber recently? And most people say, yeah, I've caught an Uber. But if you ask them, how many people caught the very first Uber? Were they happy to jump in a stranger's car when Uber was first
mm,
around? And the answer is
mm,
usually no.
mm,
And you can look at many, many platforms like that. Airbnb was the same. Most people now use Airbnb for at least one holiday a year. They'll use an Airbnb
mm, mm.
where, were they happy to do the first Airbnb and live in some stranger's house, and borrow it just for a week? Most people were a bit skeptical until it kind of got some traction. So
Yeah,
I think it's more about people just understanding it and getting used to that, new way of property, in the same way that people, they take time, and that, those that are skeptical, that's fine, just sit back and watch what happens. And,
mm.
this will be something that changes the way that property is traded.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's been sort of the largest hurdle that you've had um, since launching? I mean, you've only launched officially since January.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the reality really comes into how I think it's more the opposite. It's more the getting people to understand it, I think, is one thing, but what's been amazing with this so far is that the amount of traction that we've got, and there's a lot of excited people there's obviously a lot of skeptics that want to sit back and see what happens, but at the same
Mm,
time, there's a lot of people that are embracing it and saying,
mm,
wow, this is amazing. I mean, the developers that just completed the first development project on Bricklet, they're absolutely over the moon. I mean,
yeah, okay.
totally changing the way they do things. So it's
Mm,
just, more about just getting people used to it,
yeah,
more than anything, and it's more, okay, who is Bricklet? Of course, everybody's going to be a little bit worried. It's a new platform. And I just keep coming back to those examples of, being those early adopters versus
mm,
someone who's going to sit around and kind of wait to see what happens next.
yeah. So are there, so for the investors out there that are interested, and feel free to ask questions. I'm sure a lot of people are just going, well, mind blown. I'm sure you get this that reaction a lot.
Yeah.
And you know, people are asking about the secondary market. They'll talk about the valuations, you
Yeah.
know, and how they can extract, you know, whether they can leverage the equity from. Did we talk about accessing equity? No, we talked about leveraging if we were able to,
Yeah.
you know, use a deposit and all that. So how is it that ability to access equity?
I mean, there will be in the future. I think there's a little bit more work to be done around what has to be done for existing properties, especially existing properties that people want to release some equity over time.
Mm,
It's definitely possible, and something that's on our on our to-do list at some stage, to look at that scenario, because it's
mm,
it is very valuable. At the moment, it's not available. We've taken the path of going, the new property is much easier to put put the process around. So we're focused on that at the moment. However, we will be looking at that ability to release equity over time from a property.
okay. All right. Cool. So, uh, obviously, just with any new technology, there's going to be added stuff going on in the background. I'm sure that we'll be tacking on along the way. Let me see if there are a few comments here. Let's see. Hi, Corn. Hi, Mick. Hi, Felix. I like to say hello to everyone. And a few other people here. We mentioned very, very briefly, and this is just a little bit of a light touch on the property development side of things. And I won't go into too much detail because I like us to have some time to go through part 2. But you were actually talking about a new way of funding developments as well. And that's a whole development site.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay. So I think that's something that we'll go into a lot more deep dive onto the onto the next session. But basically, what it means is, I mean, a typical just to give a really high level, I guess, snapshot is that development is typically kind of, you'll pay for the land, you'll finance then to do construction, and then the price is paid and everything's settled, and you make the remaining as profit. So that's the traditional model. With Bricklit, you actually raise the price, you raise the money for the land, and you raise the money for the construction, and take some equity in Bricklets in the project, and then everybody shares in the upside. So it starts to make a very, very interesting project. So
yeah,
really
definitely
talking about that next week.
I think it will be that's something that's going to take a whole session on its own, and probably if you've got some slides there, because this is a whole different the funding space in development, as you know, is very, very topical. There's a lot of private lending out there. Admittedly, private lending is getting more expensive as well, and banks aren't lending as much as they used to. So I'd really like us to explore how that looks like, and the benefits, and probably the savings that you're getting as a developer from it. But you're not, like I said, we're looking at a whole different model there, similarly as we are as investors looking at it from a different model.
Absolutely.
So the one thing that sort of popped out of my mind is, are there actually cost savings for investors using Bricklit?
Well, I guess the cost saving really comes from the investor point of view that buy Bricklets. There's not much difference between what they would buy with a Bricklet to what they would buy with a full property. It's very, very similar in price. There's no real cost saving. But there's also no extra expense as well. So we've done our best to make sure that there's no cost to the Bricklet purchaser other than the regulatory costs of stamp duty and those kind of typical purchase fees.
Okay, so for a 25,000 purchase, what can we sort of expect there in terms of stamp duty, legals?
It works out to be roughly around kind of 5%. In total. So it's very similar to, if you look at a full property and see what you pay, again, similar percentage.
So it's fairly nominal there. And are people expected to also have get their lawyers to look through any of the legals, or
absolutely they can. Yeah, I mean, the way that the platform works is that it's structured as a financial product at the way that we lock the Bricklet into the land title. So there's a document. There's two documents. One is the master document, which is the master IM, which is available at any point on the platform as well after you sign up. And also there's a document that goes with each property, and that IM that goes with each property has got a full detail around who the developer is, what you're paying for, what the suburb is, all the detail, and a lot of the legal details are in there as well. So if anybody wants to take that to their lawyer, they can obviously get that reviewed and
so it's an information memorandum, so it's under a financial services license.
Correct.
Okay, perfect, excellent. So I'm sure we could ask. I know I could definitely ask a whole lot of questions. What I want to be able to do, I said, I understand there are lots of people out there that want to have more questions. Anyone that's in Brisbane, I know that you've got an information session sometime this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got this Thursday night. If there's any Brisbane people on there at the moment and they want to, maybe you could share the link out after this.
Or,
there's an event. It's I was going to say in Silicon Valley, but it's in Fortitude Valley.
It's like Silicon Valley. It's on.
So if
I'm just
anyone,
having a look. It's in
yeah,
the evening, so you've got to register. It is free, 5 to 7 p.m. Thursday, 5th of March, in Wickham Street. So right
yeah.
after that, you can go for a party. A Vestix Lab, is that a startup?
Yeah, they're kind of an
Site?
innovation company.
Okay.
They've got a very nice space there, and they're partnered with us to put on the event. So it'll be a really good event.
Okay, fantastic. All right, I've got the link here, and I'll add that on to 1 second. I'll add that on to the comments little later on. But I won't get too excited about talking about the funding side of things because I'm holding myself back. But this is going to be part two. I'm pretty sure we've got you locked in for next week.
2 weeks time.
2 weeks. 2 weeks time to talk about how we can fund development projects through Bricklit. So if you've got questions, hold them till 2 weeks from now if you can, and you've got any particular questions for Darren, and we've got quite a lot of people that watch this throughout the week as well, so I'm sure they'll have comments to add to it. So I'd like to thank you, Darren. If you've got, do you have any particular questions yourself? I should have.
No, I think, I'd love to hear any of the questions, from the audience and, especially from the developers around, what they see and, what potential properties we could bring onto the platform as well.
Yeah. So if there are any developers that are keen to, list on Bricklet, I hope I'm doing the right word.
That's right. Yeah.
And I know there's a bit of stock sort of flying around in some places, and people like to have pre-sales and things like that. Get in contact with you to see if there's an option to be able to sell, because it's a bit different. Particularly, are you finding that higher valued properties, or there's a specific sweet spot?
There's no real sweet spot. I think, it just comes down to, I think the main thing that I think makes it successful or not successful for each of the properties is, does it make sense from an investor's point of view? So is it a good investment proposition? It doesn't necessarily have to have the high yield. If it's got good capital growth, doesn't necessarily have to have the good capital growth if it's got the high yield. So just think of the same metrics that people would use to look at for an investment property in full.
Yeah.
They'd use the similar metrics for Bricklet.
Okay, excellent. Well, if they've got any questions, I've put a link to your website, and I'm sure there's a contact. Was there a contact us email that you've got there? Excellent. No more questions for me because I don't want to burst the bubble for the next session. Thank you so much. Julian says very interesting. Julian's from Brisbane, but he's actually in Sydney at the moment, so it's a shame you can't make the information session, but I appreciate your time, Darren. It's been, I said, I'm very excited about this platform. Definitely, we're looking at it from an investment point of view, personally, as well as our projects as well. So definitely, if anyone out there, look into what these guys are doing. It really is a game changer, and particularly with young people as well. Self-managed supers. So thank you for your time. I'll be seeing you in 2 weeks, and I'll pop that link onto the comment section as well. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Darren, I'll be sending you an invitation. Look out for the event. We'll be popping that up on the Facebook page, and we'll be catching up with you pretty soon.
Great. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks, Darren. Ciao. Bye.
Yeah, bye.